The rain fell hard over the streets of Seoul, turning the alleyways into slick, shining rivers of neon reflections. She pulled her hoodie tighter around herself, the books clutched to her chest, and hurried along the sidewalk. College was over for the day, and all she wanted was to get home without incident. The city, with its lights and its hum, usually felt alive, but tonight, something in the air felt heavy, like a storm gathering beneath the clouds. Around the corner, a black luxury car slowed, the engine quiet except for the soft purr under the rain. Inside, a man sat, eyes sharp, calculating. He had been tracking the assassin for weeks, following the scent of betrayal and blood through the city streets. His reputation preceded him, feared, ruthless, untouchable. Yet, despite all his power, a single mistake could destroy everything he had built. The assassin emerged from the shadows, moving with the precision of a predator. The man in the car raised his gun, squeezing the trigger without hesitation. The sound of the shot echoed through the wet streets, but it wasn't the assassin who fell. The girl in the hoodie yelped as a searing pain tore through her shoulder, sending her stumbling forward. Books scattered across the sidewalk, rain splashing over them, as the world seemed to slow. Time compressed. The man froze, heart hammering. The bullet had hit her. He jumped out of the car, ignoring the rain and the danger, rushing toward her. His hands were steady despite the panic rising inside him. Kneeling beside her, he whispered, "Stay with me. Stay with me." Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and confusion, and something else, a spark of defiance that didn't belong in a situation like this. I didn't," she tried to speak, but the pain cut her off. "Don't talk. Just breathe," he said. He ripped a piece of his coat, pressing it against the wound. Blood seeped through, and the gravity of the mistake pressed down on him like a vice. The world around them seemed to hold its breath. Cars passed, indifferent, lights reflecting on the puddles, but none of it mattered. All that mattered was her. He lifted her into the car, ignoring the rain, ignoring the stares of pedestrians who didn't dare intervene. Driving fast, weaving through the slick streets, he felt the weight of everything he had built slipping through his fingers. His empire, his control, his pride, none of it mattered if she didn't survive. In the safety of a hidden safe house, he laid her on the couch, carefully examining the wound. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. She kept trying to apologize, but he silenced her with a wave of his hand. "This isn't your fault," he said. His voice was rough, something between command and plea. "It's mine. He stopped, unable to continue. Saying it aloud made the mistake real, and he couldn't bear it. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw the fear in his eyes, the kind that came from knowing that the world you controlled could crumble in a single instant. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. He hesitated, then finally admitted, "Because if you die, everyone will know I failed." Her brow furrowed. "Your empire? People will come after me." He nodded grimly. "Yes. They'll use you as a weapon against me. To humiliate me. I can't let that happen." The weight of his words sank in. She had survived a random shot in the street, only to find herself trapped in a deadly game between forces she didn't understand. Her life, once ordinary and predictable, had become dangerous in ways she couldn't imagine. For days, he watched over her, bringing her food, cleaning her wound, and keeping the safe house secure. At first, she was wary, mistrustful of the man who had nearly killed her. But over time, she began to see another side of him. The sharp edges, the cold ruthlessness she had imagined, were tempered by a quiet care. He would sit silently by her side, reading her expressions, learning her habits. She found herself speaking more freely, telling him about her life, her studies, her dreams. And he listened, really listened, as though he had never had the chance to hear anything beyond orders and threats. One evening, after the rain had stopped and the city lights shimmered through the windows, she looked at him and asked softly, "Do you ever wish things were different?" He stared into the distance, jaw tight. "Every day," he admitted. "But in my world, different isn't allowed. You're different. And that scares me." Her hand brushed against his unintentionally, and for a fleeting moment everything else, the empire, the enemies, the blood, disappeared. There was just the two of them, connected by something fragile, unspoken, and startlingly real. "I'm scared too," she confessed. "I don't know why I'm alive. I don't know what happens next. But I'm glad it's you here." He swallowed, the admission of feelings foreign and dangerous. Showing vulnerability was a weakness he could not afford, but the pull toward her was undeniable. Every instinct told him to push her away, to protect her by keeping distance, yet every heartbeat told him the opposite. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the storm was far from over. Enemies were already circling, waiting for a mistake, waiting for her to slip. And he knew that to keep her alive, he would have to risk everything he had ever built. As night deepened over Seoul, the girl slept fitfully on the couch, her injury healing slowly, her breaths even but tense. He sat in the chair beside her, gun resting within reach, eyes scanning the city through the rain-speckled window. His mind raced through possibilities, strategies, and contingencies, but none of it mattered if she didn't survive. And somewhere deep inside, a thought had taken root, unbidden, dangerous, and exhilarating. Perhaps in saving her, he could save a part of himself too. The city slept, unaware that a single bullet had altered the balance of power, the course of two lives, and the fragile beginnings of a love neither had expected, but both had already begun to feel. The days that followed were a delicate dance of caution and quiet intimacy. The girl, still recovering from the gunshot, began to walk without support, though every step was cautious. He watched her closely, alert to every movement, every sound outside the safehouse walls. Seoul's neon glow felt distant here, but the city's dangers were never far behind. She had started to learn the rhythms of his world. She knew the sharp angles of his office, the way he checked every door and window, the silent conversations he had over encrypted lines that always ended with the same cold certainty. She asked questions, sometimes innocently, sometimes with daring curiosity. "Why do they hate me so much?" she asked one evening, sitting on the edge of the couch, her shoulders still tender under the bandages. He avoided her gaze, fiddling with a glass of water. "They don't know you," he said finally. "They know me. And in my world, anyone connected to me can be a weapon." She frowned, the anger and confusion in her eyes mirroring the storm outside the safehouse window. "So, I'm a pawn." He finally looked at her, and for a moment, the hardened mask fell away. "No, not a pawn. You're important to me. And I don't care what they think. You don't get hurt. Not on my watch." Her chest tightened at the words, the warmth of them seeping into the fear she had been carrying since the night the bullet had struck her. His empire, his power, his danger, they were all shadows around them, but for the first time, she felt a spark of safety in his presence. Over the next few days, she began to see other sides of him. He wasn't just a man who commanded fear and respect. He was careful, patient, and almost impossibly attentive. He noticed when she winced walking down the hall, when her eyes lingered on the books she missed reading, when the first hints of fatigue crept into her voice. One afternoon, the rain returned, tapping insistently against the windows. They were alone in the safe house, the city quiet outside. She was sitting at a small table, sketching in her notebook, when he appeared behind her. "You're talented," he said quietly, peering over her shoulder. She blushed, glancing up at him. "It's just something to keep my mind busy. Helps me forget the rest." He studied the lines she had drawn, vivid, chaotic, yet full of life. He reached out, almost tentatively, and brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. She shivered at the touch, though whether from cold or awareness, she didn't know. "Do you trust me?" he asked suddenly, voice low, almost a whisper. She hesitated, then nodded. I think I do." That small affirmation made something inside him shift. It wasn't just guilt keeping him by her side anymore, it was connection, something unspoken but undeniable. Every calculated move he had ever made, every empire he had built, now seemed meaningless compared to keeping her alive. But the world outside was not forgiving. News had already begun to leak. Enemies had learned that the girl had survived the shot meant for an assassin. Whispers had started, rumors twisting the mistake into a story of weakness. They would come, sooner or later, and when they did, the girl would be the prize, the weapon, the message. He tightened his grip on reality, reviewing every plan, every escape route, every potential threat. He couldn't let her leave. Not now. Not ever. One night, as they prepared a modest dinner in the dimly lit kitchen, she looked up at him, her eyes serious. "I want to help. I don't want to just hide and wait." He shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips despite the tension in his chest. "This isn't a game. If you're out there, you're a target." "I don't care," she said, defiance sparking in her voice. "If you're risking everything for me, I want to do something, too." Her determination struck him in a way he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't reckless, it was brave. And in a world where trust was rare and danger was constant, bravery was as precious as loyalty. "You don't understand what you're asking," he warned gently. "I understand more than you think," she replied. And there was no fear in her eyes, only a willingness to face whatever came. He studied her, the pulse in her neck, the set of her jaw. Something in him softened. He had spent his life calculating, predicting, controlling, but here, with her, the rules were different. He couldn't control her feelings. He couldn't control the bond forming between them. He could only protect her, and hope it was enough. The following morning brought the first real sign of danger. A car slowly rolled past the safe house, far too deliberate in its pace to be coincidental. He noticed immediately, his instincts flaring. The girl saw him tense, the sudden hardness in his expression unfamiliar to her. Who is it?" she asked. "Someone testing the waters," he said. "Enemies. They know you're here. They'll try to reach you." Her hands trembled, but she didn't back away. Instead, she stepped closer. "Then we face them. Together." For a moment, he wanted to laugh at the audacity of it, at the simplicity of her courage. But then he realized, it wasn't audacity. It was love, growing quietly and stubbornly in the midst of danger. And for the first time, he understood that the hardest battles weren't fought with guns or power. They were fought in the spaces between trust and fear, vulnerability and control, life and love. That night, as the city outside settled into uneasy silence, he watched her sleep. The rain pattered softly on the windows, a lullaby for a world that had gone mad. He felt a strange, heavy weight in his chest, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and something new, hope. The enemies were coming. The empire could collapse. The city could burn. But as long as she was alive, as long as she was here with him, there was a chance to fight. Not just for survival, but for something worth more than power, more than loyalty, more than life itself. Love, fragile and fierce, had begun to root itself between them. And he knew, with a certainty he had never known before, that nothing, not bullets, not betrayal, not even his own mistakes, would stop him from protecting her. The first shot came just after midnight. He had been standing by the window, watching Seoul's lights blur in the rain, when a sudden bang echoed through the safe house. The girl screamed, flinching as he grabbed her and pushed her behind the couch. "They found us," he growled, eyes scanning for the source. Shadows flickered in the corners of the room, shapes moving too fast for human eyes to follow. His gun was out in an instant, a shield against the unseen. She clutched his arm. I'm scared." He shook his head, voice low but firm. "No, not now, not ever. You stay behind me. Trust me." Bullets ricocheted off the walls as he returned fire, his movements precise, practiced, lethal. The enemies were skilled, organized, but so was he. Each shot he fired wasn't just to defend himself, it was to protect her, to keep her alive at any cost. When the first attackers broke through the side entrance, he was ready. He moved with the fluidity of someone who had lived with danger for decades, but even he couldn't ignore the sight of her eyes, wide, terrified, but unwavering, watching him fight. "You'll be okay," he said, more to himself than to her. "I won't let anything happen to you." Hours seemed to stretch into eternity. The fight was relentless, every enemy that fell revealing another waiting, more dangerous, closer. Yet he didn't falter. Every instinct, every calculation, every memory of mistakes past guided him, because if she lived, it meant something in a world that had long offered him nothing but control and fear. Finally, The last threat was silenced. The attackers were gone, or dead, but the safe house bore the scars of battle. Furniture overturned, walls pocked with bullet holes, rainwater dripping in through a broken window. He turned to her, chest heaving, and she ran to him without hesitation, wrapping her arms around his middle. You saved me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I told you," he murmured, holding her tight. "I told you I would." For the first time since the shooting, they allowed themselves a moment of vulnerability. She pressed her forehead to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart, and realized how much she had come to rely on his presence, his protection, and his quiet care. "I don't know how I'd survive without you," she said softly. "And you'll never have to," he replied. "Not if I can help it." Days passed as they recuperated. The city slowly returned to its normal rhythm outside their walls, but the danger hadn't disappeared entirely. The empire he had built, the enemies he had made, all of it loomed like a shadow. He knew that staying in one place was impossible, that every second they lingered increased the risk. Yet in that liminal space between danger and relief, their bond deepened. They shared small moments, a cup of tea in the morning, a laugh over a clumsy attempt at cooking, the quiet comfort of reading side by side. And each moment wove trust, respect, and an unspoken affection into a fragile but undeniable connection. One evening, as the neon lights of Seoul flickered against the rain-slick streets outside, she looked at him seriously. "What happens now? When the Empire finds out I'm alive?" He ran a hand through his hair, grim. "I have to make choices, some of which may destroy everything I've worked for." Her hand found his, steady and warm. "Then we face it together. Whatever comes." His chest tightened. He had lived a life of absolute control, absolute power. But in that touch, that simple assertion of solidarity, he felt a power he had never known. The power to care for someone beyond fear or strategy, the power to love and be loved in return. The first real confrontation with his enemies came at dawn. They had tracked him, discovered his movements, and surrounded the outskirts of the city. He could have fled, abandoned the girl, preserved his empire. But he refused. Not this time. He fought not as a man defending property or pride, but as a man defending the life of someone he loved. The girl stayed hidden, heart pounding, watching the man she had come to trust and care for move with lethal precision, each action a promise that he would not let them take her. Hours later, when the dust settled and silence returned, he walked to her trembling form and held her close. "We're alive," he said, almost to convince himself as much as her. "We are," she whispered, her voice soft but sure. In the aftermath, he made decisions that shocked even his closest allies. He dismantled parts of his empire, let go of territories, and abandoned old vendettas. Each choice carried risk, but it was worth it if it meant her safety. The power he had clung to for decades now seemed empty compared to the weight of her life in his hands. They moved quietly, away from the prying eyes of enemies and former associates. Seoul was vast, and in its hidden corners, they found temporary solace. And in that solace, a tentative love blossomed. It was not easy, nor perfect. Fear lingered, shadows followed, and every step forward was measured against the threats of the past. Yet in the midst of chaos, they discovered joy, shared meals, stolen moments of laughter, quiet conversations under the glow of streetlights. One night, sitting on the roof of a safe house overlooking the glittering city, she leaned against him. "I never thought I'd find this," she said softly. "Not just surviving, but this." He tightened his arm around her. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But maybe surviving isn't just about staying alive. Maybe it's about finding someone worth it. Someone who makes you want to fight for more than power." Her fingers intertwined with his, and for the first time since the bullet had changed everything, he allowed himself to imagine a life beyond fear, beyond blood, beyond the empire. A life where she was safe, and they were together. And though the world outside was still dangerous, though enemies still lurked in shadows, he knew one undeniable truth. He had found someone worth sacrificing everything for. In the quiet that followed, the city breathing around them, they shared a small, unspoken vow. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Fear, power, blood, or love, It no longer mattered which would dominate their lives. They had each other. And in the heart of Seoul, amidst neon and rain, two lives, once strangers, once victims of circumstance, found a fragile, enduring love born from the fire of chaos and the courage to protect what mattered most.